Hey guys, I'm Kim and today we're going to be talking about Ant-Man, the most recent release from Marvel. So I have been excited about this movie for a pretty long time. I don't know if you guys know, but Edgar Wright is literally my favorite director, my favorite writer. He's just, everything he does I watch and is amazing. So I was very excited that he was attached to this project, that he'd written the story and he'd be working on it for so many years, and Marvel was finally giving him the chance to make this movie. Then the news came out that Marvel and Edgar Wright had parted ways and I got so depressed. I was so worried for this film because I could just see it having this Edgar Wright flair to it, and I thought, oh my god, what's gonna happen now that he's left the project? But even though I have loyalties to Edgar Wright, holy crap was this movie amazing. You could just feel all the Edgar Wrightness in this film, and I felt like Peyton Reed was paying respect to Edgar Wright from this, even though he was essentially his competitor. The jokes were so witty, they weren't over the top, and they were completely to point in the plot, which I think is really difficult when you've got a lot of these American movies just play on this silly forms of humor, which I found sometimes in the Avengers too. I felt like the humor was too over the top and they tried to play on it way too much rather than showing the storyline, the action that was happening. It's like they almost relied on the humor to engage their audiences. But for Ant-Man, it's all the humor, literally. You need the humor in this film because Ant-Man is such a weird character. He's such a weird superhero, so I think it was very obvious that this was going to be a very comedy-based film. But putting comedy aside, the way that this film was shot and edited out just worked absolutely to perfection. And I personally never had so much fun watching a Marvel movie before, or even a movie in general for such a long time. I was literally pissing myself in the cinema throughout most of the movie. But let's get into the gritty details of what this film is about. So Paul Rudd was playing the main character of Scott Lang, who is the second rendition of Ant-Man. First rendition was Hank Pym, which we saw as Michael Douglas in the film. They didn't really go too much into Hank Pym's backstory about Ant-Man, which I think was good because the film is revolving around Scott rather than Hank, but we saw a little bit of what was happening then, so I think it was a good idea to focus on Scott, because from the comics, I mean, Hank is a bit of a dick sometimes, and he did create Ultron, so I don't think the Marvel Cinematic Universe could really take that on as a storyline, even though it's something that's quite crucial to the comic book universe. But I guess because of what had happened in the Avengers 2, they just had to let it slide and not go too much into it. We sort of underestimate Hank Pym a little bit in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but I mean, they have to play with what they've got, basically. Now, Paul Rudd as Scott was perfect. He just played the character to perfection, and I've always been a fan of Paul Rudd ever since Clueless. Clueless was one of my favorite films growing up, and I always had a schoolgirl crush on him. So I'm so glad he's now finally in movies that I will enjoy watching. Sorry for all the previous stuff you've done, but I'm so excited that he's going to be now entered into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We can obviously deduct from the movie that Ant-Man's going to play a little bit of a role in Civil War through his run-in with the Avengers and Hawkman. I think one of my favorite bits about how the movie was made and how it was shown was how they showed Scott changing from his main body to his Ant-Man body. Now this could have been done really lamely and just been a zap and he's small, but I love the fact that they constantly played back to this epic, crazy stuff that he's doing when he's small and then comparing it to real life. For example, when they're trying to get into this company towards the end of the movie, Scott and all his ants are riding through the water vault trying to get inside this company, and it's all crazy epic, oh my god, what's gonna happen, so much tension, and then they finally pop out of the tap in a random bathroom. And it's just the most simple, everyday thing you could ever see. Genius. So I like the fact that in this film they were actually making fun of themselves throughout the whole thing. I think that's the only way they could pull off this Ant-Man movie, is to add that element of comedy and self-awareness to a point in this film. Now I have to talk about my all-time favorite scene in this film, which I think everyone was pissing themselves. I know I was. My favorite part is when Scott intercepts Darren in his daughter's house and they're fighting on the toy train track, and then Scott makes Thomas the Tank Engine life-size. I literally pissing myself in the cinema. I had a laughing fit. As I said, the best fun I've had with a Marvel film in years. Though this film was really amazing, there were a few things that I didn't quite like about it, but I guess that's to be said of all movies of all time. There's always something you're gonna dislike. The two main things that I didn't like was the villain in this film. Darren Cross felt a little undercooked to me. He just seemed like that typical comic book villain that doesn't really have a strong backstory or a strong reason of why he's gone crazy. We could see that there were little elements in there that Hank had sort of raised him when he was younger into like the person that he wanted him to be, but he obviously was abandoned by Hank for quite a while because he could see bits that he wasn't quite sure was safe for someone to take over his company with. There was also some really weird moments in the film with Darren that made me feel that I'm not sure that was what they were going for, but I'm not 100% convinced. I don't know if that sentence made sense, but let me go into it. So they had a lot of weird, uncomfortable touching issues with Darren in this movie, which I thought was kind of strange, but because he was a weird guy, it sort of felt right. But it mostly happened in that first meeting where one of the board members wasn't happy about the suit and how it would be developed and that it wasn't safe. So he sort of touched him and said, we'll have a chat about this later. And then later on, of course, when the guy's peeing and he turns around, Darren's standing right there. And he's sort of touching him again, he gets him a towel, he wipes his hands, you know, all this kind of weird stuff that I guess it sort of happens in other countries. Like when you have like a butler person, I'm not sure, in like a toilet of a nightclub and they're like washing your hands for you or something. But I don't know if that happens in America, so that felt kind of weird. And the chairman dude, I'm not sure his name, was also a little wigged out about it. So I'm not sure if that was there to add another element to his character, that he's really awkward, insecure, and just doesn't know how to behave socially. If that was what they were going for, then I can understand that as another element to his character, that he's just really weird. But it wasn't developed that much, so it felt kind of weird to just have that there and you're just like, oh, what are you doing? It's kind of strange. Though that sort of played out throughout the whole film, that one element of him just getting too close to people and touching people, it was a little off-putting. The last thing that I'm not quite convinced about was actually Evangeline Lilly in this film. Now, I haven't really watched a lot of Lost. I think I've seen like the first season or something, and then I just didn't watch it anymore. So I can't say, oh, I'm a huge Evangeline Lilly fan because Lost and all that stuff. I don't have that base for her as most Lost fans do. So to me, she wasn't really convincing as the female lead in this film. I don't know what it was. I mean, her character, there wasn't a lot for her to play with her character. She was the typical, you know, daughter of the prodigy, and she wants to, you know, succeed, but he won't let her because he's afraid that she'll hurt herself, kind of thing. And then obviously she's kick-ass with martial arts. That just seems to be like the template female nowadays in these kind of films. So it's not ideal for an actress to come in and have to play that every time and try create something new and interesting. So I felt like she was a bit wooden and just like a cardboard pretty person just stamped there for people to, you know, admire and stuff. So her character didn't really convince me that it belonged in this story that much, even though of course we need a female character for Scott to have a relationship with. It just, I don't know if it was her as an actor or the character or her lines. It just felt, it felt weird, and it felt like, I don't know, just, maybe because it was cliche, maybe that's why. Overall, this film was fantastic. I loved it so much, and I'm happy to say that it may be one of my, I'm willing to put it as one of my favorite Marvel movies. I have strong feelings about Winter Soldier, but I really loved Ant-Man, so I'm going to put them on the same level, which is weird, seeing as Winter Soldier was such a like, oh my god, but Ant-Man to me is comedy done right, action done right, his character done right. So I really enjoyed it, and I'm willing to say that it's one of my favorite Marvel films to date, for sure. I would give this film an 8.5 out of 10. I was going to put it higher, but there were some parts of the story and some of the characters, like the villain, that I wasn't overly convinced on, so I'm giving it an 8.5 out of 10. So if you haven't seen Ant-Man, please go watch it. It's such a great addition to the Marvel Universe, and I can't wait to see Paul Rudd being more connected with the Avengers and in the Marvel Universe in general. I've read a little bit of Ant-Man, but not a lot, so I wanted to read more about Scott because he seems like a character I'd be more interested in rather than Eric O'Grady, because I've heard that he's a bit of a dick. Hank is not... he can be a bit of a dick too, so I'm not too much into the dick thing. What came out of my mouth? Okay. So, I wanted to stick with Scott Lang as Ant-Man. So if you're also interested in reading a little bit more about Ant-Man, in particular Scott Lang, there's a really great graphic novel that they've just put together at the moment, a trade paperback, Ant-Man Scott Lang by David Michelinie. Now this paperback has a lot of different collections from other things such as like Iron Man and the Avengers, so it collects all of his main stories into one section. So if you're interested in reading a bit more about Scott Lang, I would definitely recommend. As always, thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed the video. I want to hear your thoughts, tell me what you thought of the movie and comment down below. Again, thank you for watching and I will see you very soon. Bye bye.